Welcome to SVG-TV's news for Wednesday, May 12, 2021. I'm Campbell with the details. A supplementary budget of $117.9 million EC dollars was passed in Parliament last evening to assist the government with its response to the immediate humanitarian needs and clean-up efforts in the aftermath of the eruption of the volcano. Minister of Finance, Campbell, who presented the motion for the supplementary estimates, said the support is the first phase, which will be for the next 3 to 6 months and does not include a reconstruction.
This is not a reconstruction budget. And while it has money to build in excess of 50 homes and to purchase $1 million worth of land to relocate people who are living in dangerous areas. This is not the relocation budget. More of that will come. And while it has money for SET and YES and Prime, that is not the purpose of the budget. It's humanitarian. And while the budget is primarily focused on the next 3 to 6 months, it is not, therefore, a long-term budget. It is a short-term budget to deal with short-term needs and demands.
The finance minister noted that the $117.9 million EC dollars is not enough, but will have to do in the interim, noting that most of the monies will come from coffers of a central government, which includes the contingency fund.
$70 million is from money set aside from the contingencies fund and the catastrophe drawdown deferred option. And in spite of all this money we're spending, the contingencies fund was sufficiently robust that we are still to this day holding back an additional $15 million just in case we experience a storm or a hurricane in the coming weeks and months. That is the robustness of the fund. We don't have to spend it all now. We're aware that other challenges may be on the horizon, and the contingency fund was sufficiently strong to have, even with this rainy day, to set aside a little more in the event of a second rainy day in quick succession.
The finance minister said that they are working with preliminary assessments of damage, which will see thousands of volcano-affected persons, mainly those from the red and orange zone communities, benefiting from support from the government. $10.5 million have been set aside in the supplementary budget for income support for farmers from the red and orange zones. So said Finance Minister Campbell, who gave a breakdown of monies allocated to persons affected by the volcano eruption, which will be given out at the end of this month. The minister said farmers will receive monthly income support of $500 until the end of the year and an additional $500 one-off payment for production support.
Red and orange zones. Farmers will receive a $500 cash grant towards production support. This grant is intended to assist farmers with meeting the individual needs of their particular farm, whether it is the tools that they may need, or hiring of labor, or purchasing of agricultural inputs. Honorable members will note, therefore, that between June and December, for the remainder of this year, farmers in the red and orange zones will each receive a total of $4,000 in income and production support. They get 7 $500 payments in income support for the remainder of the month, and then they get the additional $500 payment in production support.
Non-farmers in the red and orange zone will also receive income support of $400 for 3 months.
The hardest part was not while you were in the shelter, but when you got back home and the economy still wasn't ready to receive you and you couldn't find yourself gainfully employed. So this supplementary budget will provide workers from the red and orange zones with income support of $400 a month for the first 3 months after they return to their homes. A total of $4.5 million will go to these non-farming workers in the red and orange zone.
$3.8 million, $3.8 million have been budgeted for farmers outside of the red and orange zone. In addition, 4,500 vulnerable people have been identified to benefit from love boxes and food vouchers worth $150.
The government will transition to delivery of similarly valued food vouchers to enable vulnerable volcano-affected persons to purchase foodstuff at local supermarkets. So we start with the boxes that have the groceries and the non-perishable foodstuff, but it doesn't make sense to bring you a second and a third box every month because you might still have some elements from the first box. You might need another bottle of cooking oil. You might not have finished your bag of flour or your tins of corned beef. So you get that initial non-perishable box, but thereafter we give you a voucher that you can take to local supermarkets and buy whatever it is you want and you need, up to $150.
Meanwhile, $8 million was allocated to feed persons in shelters and hotels for the next 2 months. It is estimated that more than 10,000 farmers, including fishers, will receive some form of support from the government. The finance minister said other form of support will be provided from other agencies and organizations. Food, water, medicine, cots, and mattresses are some of the main relief supplies that SVG continues to receive in the aftermath of the eruption of the La Soufrière volcano. This was noted in Parliament yesterday by Prime Minister Dr. Alf Gonsalves, who was asked by Opposition Leader Dr. Godwin Friday what relief supplies has the government received and expects to receive. Prime Minister Gonsalves said as the situation on the ground evolves with persons moving back into the orange zone, the director of NEMO, Michelle Forbes, will soon update the list of needs at this time. Discussing the storage and equitable distribution of the relief supplies, Prime Minister Gonsalves said subcommittees under NEMO are responsible for the storage and tracking of supplies.
There is in NEMO, we follow the Act. There are several subcommittees. Supplies which are coming in from overseas are dealt with by a permanent secretary, in this case a permanent secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and working with the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, where they're involved in purchasing locally. There's a particular subcommittee dealing with warehousing, with persons who are in charge of that. There are people who are involved in a communications and IT system. There's a subcommittee dealing with that.
In addition to this, Prime Minister Gonsalves said an IT system was developed with the help of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, SEDEMA, and the World Food Program that is keeping track of supplies.
There's an IT system which has been developed and which does the tracking. As you can imagine, there's a lot of storage, in addition to all the sleeping materials and so forth. And we have to provide food. Just give examples. It's 21,000 lunches, breakfast, lunches, and dinners a day for the shelters. And everything is entered and everything is tracked. The World Food Program is very instrumental in helping with the IT system and has been. So to SEDEMA.
The Prime Minister also noted that the distribution of supplies is being governed by persons appointed by NEMO or local subcommittees and refuted claims that political biases are governing the distribution of the relief supplies.
In terms of distribution on the ground, the people who are distributing are individuals who are selected by NEMO, where they are functioning local committees, district committees, and they function. I hear it being said that distribution is being done on a politically partisan basis. I don't know how that is possible, and there's absolutely no evidence of that. And if there's any evidence of that, somebody should bring it to my attention.
Students across SVG will return to physical and virtual learning through a 4-phase program designed by the Ministry of Education to return all students to the classroom. Minister of Education Curtis King shared the details of the 4-phase program in Parliament yesterday. He said the first phase, dubbed Return to Happiness, which involved giving psychological support to students in shelters, began on May 3rd, 2021. This was followed closely by the second phase on May 11th, which features informal teaching and learning activities with said students. The minister detailed the plans for the additional phases 3 and 4.
Phase 3 will see the commencement of face-to-face instruction on May 17th for all students taking the CXC administered examinations, including, of course, CPEA and CSEC. The final phase, which is scheduled to commence by 25th May, will involve the return of all students, except those doing the external examinations, to the virtual classroom, meaning, of course, online instruction.
Where possible, the Education Minister says face-to-face learning will commence in schools that meet the criteria to allow safe return to that format of teaching. Students and teachers are expected to continue to follow the Ministry of Education's existing safety protocols.
The schools whose location and size of population allow for the safe return to face-to-face instruction will do so. The safety of our students, of course, remains paramount. Consequently, the Ministry of Health Safety protocols will be observed during all face-to-face engagement.
Minister King said learning hubs are also being procured by the government to safely house students who will return to face-to-face instruction, as well as the distribution of tablets to students in grades 2, 3, and 4 to ensure their participation with the online classes.
In preparation for this continuity of learning program, the Ministry of Education has identified and contacted several owners and operators of building facilities for use as learning hubs. These learning hubs will be used to host face-to-face instruction for primary and secondary school students who are preparing for their 2021 external examinations. Additionally, over 6,600 devices are presently being distributed to the primary school students between the grades.
Meanwhile, the Education Minister said parents will be responsible for the upkeep and general repairs of tablets distributed to students across SVG. He noted that the ministry has been receiving reports from parents about damaged devices that were previously distributed. He said where possible, the ministry has been assisting. However, parents must be mindful that the responsibility is theirs to ensure the tablet's functionality.
Whenever these tablets are damaged due to the neglect, or let us say due to the responsibility of those using, obviously the parents are expected to pay for fixing these devices. So what I would repeat is that where, for example, the devices might have been damaged due to no fault of the parents or students, at the ministry we try to see what can be done. But clearly the responsibility is that of the parents to ensure the maintenance and upkeep of these devices.
Some updates now on the last referral volcano. Lead monitoring scientist Dr. Thomas Christopher said that the episode of explosive activity coming from the volcano is now behind us. Providing his daily update on NBC Radio, Dr. Christopher said in the coming days and weeks, they will be closely monitoring what happens next. But for now, the volcanologist said the volcano is out of the dangerous phase.
Well, in terms of that episode of explosive activity, we can definitely say that is behind us. I think right now there are a number of options as to what this volcano may or may not be doing. And I think one option, and the most welcomed one, would be that the eruption has stopped and it's dying away. Another option could be that it's a break between pulses. However, I think that is fairly unlikely based on how I've learned how this volcano behaves. So fingers crossed is the first option, that everything is done. It's done doing what it's doing this time around, and it's going to go back to sleep.
The volcanologist said gases were measured yesterday and there are 208 tons being released per day, which is also a good sign that things are dying down.
There are 4 gases in total. I measure hydrogen sulfide, sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, and water. So I'm having a look at what those other ones are doing as well. And that, as I said yesterday, this gives me information about different parts of the system. So when I look at the carbon dioxide flux, or the ratio of the carbon dioxide to the total sulfur, it tells me a lot about what's happening deep, versus just looking at the sulfur flux only, which tells me what's happening in the mid-crustal region. So as I mentioned yesterday, when I am doing that flux measurement, the multi-gas is actually on the boat with me, running at the same time, and it's collecting concentration data for the 4 gases.
Dr. Christopher further noted that of the 4 gases measured yesterday, more carbon dioxide is being released daily.
Large compared to the SO2 fluxes, and you would expect that because carbon dioxide is a larger constituent of the volcanic plume, more so than any of the sulfur species. So, the values we're getting are a few thousand of tons per day, sometimes a few tens of thousands of tons per day of CO2. And, as I said, you expect that simply because there's a lot more CO2 in your system than sulfur.
Dr. Christopher also used the opportunity to speak a bit on a huge rock with a very beautiful crystal found by the seismic monitoring team.
Basically, what that image showed is a crystal in a rock, which by no means is an unusual thing, because what rocks are in fact, is actually an aggregate of crystals. So for some reason, and I could tell you basically that crystal had a long time to grow. That's why it got so large. So that crystal was sat there for a very long time and grew slowly. So it was fairly large. That crystal that you see in that picture, that crystal is what we call a plagioclase crystal. And almost every rock from St. Vincent, if you pick it up, and you will see these crystals, these white crystals in it. I mean, they're exactly the same thing. So in terms of monetary value, it's slightly too common for it to be worth anything. I mean, it's a very beautiful crystal if you're into that kind of thing. But basically, I think what that photo shows is that you've got some crystals which are fairly large, which would have grown slowly over a very long time.
Meanwhile, Dr. Christopher said the safety of persons returning to the red zone will be determined on how safe the government can make the areas for people to reoccupy.
Currently, La Soufrière is not exploding. So it's not really actively terrorizing the population of the country. However, we need to understand that the red zone is still filled with a lot of ash deposits and is set up in a situation where you can get these mud flows or lahars,
Yes.
if you call them that, cutting into the roads. So in terms of occupation of the red zone right now, it's not a function of what the Volcano is currently doing. It's a function of how safe the government, which would be you, sir, can make the area for the people to reoccupy as long as we think that the eruption has stopped. So even if we were to be totally convinced right now that the eruption has stopped, the question is how feasible is it for people to reoccupy the red zone in the windward side?
Dr. Christopher will be leaving SVG on Friday. Testing of gases will continue and be done by persons locally who are trained to do so. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Dr. Afghan Saab said that currently there is a lot of cleaning that needs to be done, both in the red and orange zones. However, he highlighted some of the challenges that are being faced in the northern part of the country with the cleaning up process.
Normally is fed from the Perseverance intake. The Perseverance intake is above Dixon, Valley Dixon, which is an inland village between Georgetown and Langley Park. They're now cleaning that. They had to do it manually because they can't get the equipment past given the condition of the road because of the eruption. And so they can't get equipment up there. So a lot of the cleaning has to be done manually, which means it's taking longer. So Perseverance intake, maybe by the end of this week, that might be okay. But then that could only take you as far as Rabaca, because definitely the lines, the pipes taking the water got broken.
The Prime Minister said going forward, the government has to be more vigilant and strengthen the planning laws in the red zone.
I'm just making the point that Richie makes, that we have to be very vigilant and we have to strengthen the planning laws, or at least apply the existing planning laws more rigorously in the light of what has happened. And that would call, among other things, for some houses which are already built and which may not have been even severely damaged or destroyed, but which should be pulled down and rebuilt elsewhere. But that has to be done on a case-by-case basis. Clearly, you have the general policy. But we are now going into that for the reconstruction phase, because we have monies in the existing budget and for housing. And we have added another $12.5 million in these estimates, Richie.
In some COVID-19 news now, 4 new COVID-19 positive cases were reported from 207 samples processed on Monday, May 10th, 2021, resulting in a positivity rate of 1.9%. The National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, said all new cases are evacuees in emergency shelters. 7 new recoveries were noted over the reporting period. 166 cases are currently active and 12 persons with COVID-19 have died. 1,926 cases of COVID-19 and 748 recoveries have been reported for St. Vincent and the Grenadines since March 2020. The public is urged to continue to use masks, sanitize, physically distance, and get vaccinated to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Healthcare workers across St. Vincent and the Grenadines, particularly nurses, will be given their due recognition by several local financial institutions that have come together to acknowledge their work and service to the nation. Today being International Nurses Day, the General Employees Cooperative Credit Union, GECU, and the SVG Teachers Cooperative Credit Union, SVG-TCCU, hosted the launch of the Appreciation Day at the Bank of SVG, which was attended by Minister of Health Sinclair Prince, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Simone Kiza Beach, and a number of nurses. Chief Executive Officer of GECU, Rohan Stroh, spoke on the corporate social responsibility of financial institutions and said recognizing the work of healthcare workers is paramount, especially at this time.
Cannot even ever thank our frontline healthcare workers enough. Through this initiative, we are taking this opportunity to express our appreciation for their work. We are putting in real dollars and cents to transform the thoughts of gratitude and appreciation into something tangible that they could experience. I would like to close by saying, on behalf of all the participating partners, and especially the GECU family, thank you for the sacrifices you make every day, and especially during the pandemic. Your dedication, commitment, and courage deserve our deepest gratitude and admiration. Your service to your patients and the country save lives every day and indeed make us a more productive and prosperous people.
Vice President of the SVG-TCCU, Cecil Charles, said they are happy to be on board with the initiative.
Move from dengue to COVID-19 to La Soufrière and to the recent floods. What we have seen is a resilience of our people, but most importantly, the healthcare workers who have been working tirelessly to ensure that we are safe and we remain strong. And this initiative seeks to recognize those workers who are there laboring day after day, and sometimes without even being recognized.
And Minister of Health Sinclair Prince alluded to the strain nurses face daily and thanked the financial institutions for remembering healthcare workers, noting that it is a timely initiative.
But no other period in our history has been as challenging as this period has been. This is a special period. And nurses, who are the core of the healthcare delivery system, have had to come forward, raise their hands and say, here am I. It is my profession. I have to work. We have closed some 12 or 13 health facilities in the orange and red zones, but yet these nurses have still had to be redeployed. Some of them are in shelters, some of them better off than others, but they still have to work. You still have to attend to your own psychosocial, even needs throughout the country.
Cultural Ambassador Kingsley Hero Roberts renditioned the song Fight On in honor of all nurses today. And in honor of International Nurses Day today, the Seventh-day Adventist Church acknowledged and expressed gratitude to all nurses and frontline workers in SVG who are fighting dengue fever, the pandemic, and also dealing with the aftermath of the volcanic eruption. The church said nurses and other frontline workers continue to put their health and lives on the line every day for the citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And as part of an appreciation gesture, they have decided to contribute 100 cases of water and 100 hampers, each valuing approximately $250 EC to some nurses. At the handing over ceremony of the items at the headquarters in Old Montrose, a president of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Pastor Dermonth, said they hope the small gesture will bring the nurses and frontline workers a moment of comfort and self-care. Receiving the items on behalf of the nurses was Chief Nursing Officer, Sister Peggy De Silva, who thanked the Adventist Church for the timely gesture since the venture focused on displaced nurses. Nursing Assistant Cindy Batiste Charles, who represented the displaced nurses, expressed appreciation also. The Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force, the RSVGPF, is mourning the passing of Jonathan Calvert Nichols, a former Assistant Superintendent of Police who died on May 10, 2021. Nichols enlisted in the RSVG Police Force on December 1, 1981 and retired on July 25, 2015 at the rank of Assistant Superintendent of Police. At the time of his retirement, he was the head of the Public Relations and Complaints Department. Throughout his long and impressive career, Nichols worked at several out-district police stations and departments. He also was a chief instructor at the police training school. The RSVG Police Force said Nichols was a very versatile police officer and displayed proficiency in different fields, including but not limited to sports, culture, drama, entertainment, community policing, evangelism, and more. The force said ASP Nichols also played a vital role in the Pan Against Crime initiative, the establishment of the police youth clubs, the police drama club, the annual police Christmas caroling contest, and the National 9 Mornings Festival, among others. Describing Nichols as a model police officer who went above and beyond the call of duty to protect and serve the people of SVG, the RSVG Police Force said he served with the highest standards that was requested of any officer of the law. Commissioner of Police Colin John and other ranks of the RSVG Police Force expressed deepest condolences to his wife, children, family, and friends, noting that he would be sadly missed. The Carnival Development Corporation, CDC, said it is also saddened by the passing of the former Assistant Superintendent of Police. Nichols served as a director on the board of the Carnival Development Corporation during the years 2010 to 2015 as the official representative of the RSVG Police Force. He was noted for his commitment and dedication to executing his assigned task as the CDC director. The CDC said Nichols' service as a master of ceremonies at CDC shows and at Calypso 10 shows will be remembered, and extended condolences to his family and friends. Meanwhile, the state funeral for the late Parnell Randolph Campbell QC, a former member of Parliament, Deputy Prime Minister, and Attorney General, will take place tomorrow, Thursday, May 14th. A release from the office of the Prime Minister said the official viewing of the body at the House of the Assembly will be done from 10:30 a.m. to 12:15 p.m. tomorrow. Officials will be invited to view the body from 10:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. and the general public from 11 a.m. to 12:15 p.m. The funeral service will be held at the Kingstown Methodist Church, where viewing and tributes will be from 1 p.m. followed by the service at 2:30 p.m. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, members of the public are asked to note that a number of protocols would be in effect during the service and the procession to the Kingstown Cemetery. They are as follows. Wearing a mask or face covering is mandatory. Only 1/3 of the church's capacity would be accommodated. On the inside, physical and social distancing of at least 3 to 6 feet apart. No vending would be allowed in the immediate vicinity of the funeral service and place of interment. And as a mark of respect, all flags throughout the state will be flown at half-state tomorrow.